Eventually it'll go.
Introducing Gear Websites, your all-in-one solution designed to make life easier. Whether you're a busy professional, a student juggling multiple tasks, or just someone seeking simplicity in daily life, Gear Websites has you covered. With its user-friendly interface, you can effortlessly create and manage your online presence without any technical expertise. Need to improve your gear, start a blog, or even learn a new skill? Gear Websites does it all. Enjoy seamless integration with various tools, ensuring that you can connect with your audience and manage your content efficiently. Plus, our responsive design means your website will look stunning on any device. Don't let complexity slow you down. Experience the ease of Gear Websites today. Visit us at gearwebsites.com and take the first step towards simplifying your online journey. Gear Websites, making life easier, one click at a time.
All right, welcome everybody. Scott's out there already. Welcome. So, Clover's just got done with the drone pilots test here, and figured let's go live and debrief. So, if anybody's out there thinking about becoming a drone pilot, hopefully this will help you. You labeled it "Drone Pilot Test Made Easy." So, yeah, take it away. What's the? I mean, you're only probably thinking about. I thought it started thinking about this like a week ago. What's your?
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
what's your thoughts on this whole thing?
It was actually much easier than I anticipated, and I guess I was thinking about it, and part of me was a little on the angry side, and I'm like, people learn at different rates, absorb information at different rates, but like I could not imagine paying for those $250 courses or something. Like, what in the world? And let me caveat that by saying, like, as a content creator with what I'm going to do, right? I certainly understand why you might dive deeper and do some of those courses if you was going to actually have a drone business or something. But within the context of content creation in a non drone niche, let's just say, as a supplement to your own content, yeah, it doesn't make any sense because I was under the impression almost from everybody else. And what was it? It was Sunday. Sunday, I guess was when was it Sunday or Monday? I don't even remember now that I went live. And then I was talking about it, and then you did your videos. And in between that time, I had done some homework. And at that point, I'd taken a practice test, that really hard one, the King's School practice test, and got like a 62%. I'm like, well, shit, if I'm getting a 62% right out of the gate, and it only got better from there. And by yesterday, that's how quickly this has happened. But yesterday, I was like 100% on everything, 97, right? And like 97 and 100% on everything. And so it worried me, and I think I expressed that to you, that you have all these courses, you have all these talking heads that sell these courses, and I understand it's in their best interest to make it sound more difficult than it might be. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch some videos of people. Wonder if there's anything where like they just got done doing their test, like they just walked out the door, they just got home, or it's the next day or whatever, and they're like debriefing and recapping it. And I did, and every fucking one of them, every time was like, oh, that test was no joke. Oh, it was hard. It was way harder than I expected. I'm glad I bought a course. I'm glad I studied for a month. I'm glad. I'm like, holy crap. And so it started worrying me that if I'm making 100 on these tests or whatever, like, am I being overconfident somehow, right? So I walk in today with that thought in my head a little bit, because it was so short because you had told me, gee, to get it scheduled or to get it done, right? And I was like, I'm gonna wait, whatever. And my original thought was Wednesday. I think when we had that conversation, my original thought was, okay, I may schedule it for next Wednesday. And then I went to schedule it, and Friday was available. And I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and do it Friday. Like I was already making 90%, on the practice test. And I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and do it Friday and just get it over with, right? Pull the band-aid off. I'll let you talk now.
Right on. Well, that's what it's all about. It's just doing like a debrief here. Kristen's out there. I'm not sure if he's interested or not. I told him if he wants a link. And then Scott's out there. So we got a couple of people we know that either fly or that are content creators or both or are becoming. We have a lot of people in our group of people that we know that are, in those realms. Now, as far as the pilot thing, I don't know how many people we know that are into piloting, other than I know a couple of people like Chris have drones out there. But we might find some people that just come along because of the drone thing or because they want to become a pilot and have nothing to do with any of the rest of this stuff. But Chris and Clover and I have known each other for a long time. And he just got his license or just took his test, which is essentially
I just passed the test. Yeah, I'm still pending on the actual thing there, but I probably come home.
That's the difficult part is navigating it, studying for it, and then passing. Actually be doing it, because we'll talk about like a little bit about that, I suppose, in the overview. But anyway, so he just did all that, and we're sitting here talking about it. So what I was thinking is, I didn't want to just jump in too much in case somebody's jumping in going, "What is this whole thing about?" So. Essentially, though, there's if you want to use a drone recreationally, you're supposed to go through some awareness stuff and then potentially register your drone with a sticker, with a license, like a serial number that you pay $5 to the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration for. Or if you're going to use it professionally, you're supposed to get a pilot's license, a 107 they call it. It's quicker to just write 107 all the time. So with that being the case,
I would say commercially, but
right, what did I say?
But you said professionally. I was like,
sorry, no, commercially is a more accurate word. Thanks. So I just wanted to briefly say that for anybody who's coming in completely raw. Anyway, so because Clover just bought a drone, and planned on using it essentially as a tripod or like as a just a third, like a robot to hold the camera.
An automated tripod, seriously. Yeah.
And then got into this understanding that if you want to like dot the I's and cross the T's and be accurate, be correct, but then also be in good standing. I think the best way to say it is in good standing if something goes awry.
Eliminate risk, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's easier to get the $5 drone registration than the $10,000 fine for doing something dumb with a drone without registration when you should have had it. It's easier to pay the $175 and take the test than to pay $10,000 for each instance of you abusing, some law. Now, we talked about this in another video. It's not like the FAA is out there grabbing people and making all the money for the government through fines or something. It's just that potential, right? That like worst case scenario, and to like cover your butt. So you started to look into it, saw that it wasn't, well, I'll let you describe it, but then that's what you kind of described there. Like what, about a week or so, you kind of discovered it.
Oh yeah. 5 days, man.
Figured it out. And then, well, like I say, I think it's just like anything. We can talk about this a little bit too, but just like any kind of test, because you've taken a ham test, same thing, right? Or very similar. Like it's one of those things where like, oh, I want to do it. And you find out, oh, there's like a hurdle. I have like a barrier to entry. I have to take a test, and it's technical and it's, it's whatever. It's like difficult. So, it's something I have to study for, and I haven't studied since school. So am I going to be able to pass it? A lot of people just quit right there. Once you take it, you figure out, if it's easy or not. And Clover can talk about that. But, and you kind of talked about that right off the bat. So one of the ways that people will approach these classes is to get help or not. And imagine, since you just took it, why don't you describe like the process and the costs and the, like, because it's a pretty big ordeal. Like I'm going to call it the ordeal of getting one of these licenses.
Like what I did, or?
what everybody has to do, which is you kind of discovered it just recently. Like I was looking at it for a long time and hemmed and hawed because I knew what the price was and I didn't feel like studying, so I was being lazy. You just came across it in this period of 5 days, like went from 0 to finishing it. So you might be able to describe it a lot more succinctly than I can.
Yeah. So you basically the process goes something like this. You apply for and I may screw up the acronyms, but or the the lettering, but I think it's an FTN number. You apply for an FT, or you request an FTN number. That's from like the FAA, and then from there that allows you to sign up to take the test, right? And then the test is $175, non-refundable. For me, the testing center closest one was like an hour away, but they were multiple times throughout the day, like every day of the week. I mean, so it was very easy to schedule, right?
And yours was at like a professional testing center, like what I went to, like an office building scenario with like
cubicles,
cops testing there and like secretaries and like office workers like testing there.
Yep.
Because you can also go to airports and test, I guess.
Yeah, you can. And we can, so your testing center and the way that is administrated as far as the test and or facilitated would be a better word. It's going to just depend on your location and where you're at and other things. But yeah, you sign up for the test there. So from there, you got to figure out, I guess, do I sign up or do I study first or do whatever? For me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna, now that I know that's what I need to do. And this was Sunday night, right? So we're talking not even 5 days. It'd be 5 days and a couple of hours from, oh, I need to do this to, hey, I fucking did it, right? So, um, found that out. And then my first thought was, I need to, okay, how do I find the information, like how to study for this test, right? And so I went to study guides and I watched, checked out some YouTube, and I did all of that, like Google searches and YouTube.
I wanted to interrupt you here just because I wanted to ask you this originally, and since we're doing this show, I think this is perfect, and I don't want to let it go because I'm interrupting you. It's rude, but I think this is the right time to ask it.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
We kind of talked about this a little bit the last time we chatted. I don't remember if it was on air or not, but everybody takes tests differently. Some people freeze up. Some people have taken enough tests to be comfortable with them. Some people are like enjoy them because they're like puzzles or something. So the first question is like, where are you at with tests? Like, are you comfortable with them? Are they like a pain for you? Or like, where are you at on that scale? And then 2, where does this fall into all the other tests you've taken?
I'm pretty comfortable. I have had to take a lot with different certifications and other things, so I'm pretty comfortable. As long as I'm
talking like all the computer crap that we've always had to take over the years to be able to computer
different coaching certifications and shooting stuff as well. But yeah, and then so for me, it's not so much that the test, right? So and you know this from the other day in our conversation, I will absolutely cram, right? Once I decide I'm going to do something, I know I've got to learn about it, right? I know I've got to do that. And so I almost maybe go overboard a little bit with it. And I think because I do that, I think that might make the tests and things seem easier than they would be otherwise. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's why I asked. Yeah, because some people are going to be like, "Oh, that test was easy," but they take tests all the damn time, or tests aren't a big thing to them. And then other people are going to be like, "That was the worst test ever," but every test is a pain for them. So I think this is probably about medium. But
as far as where this one falls,
I've been around pilot stuff forever, so that part, the weather was the only thing I had to worry about. Like everything else I'd seen before, and I just don't want to tell people like, "Oh, it's an easy test," because I have no idea where people are coming from.
I would. Man, I'm trying to think where this one falls. Honestly, I think if I had to place it somewhere, I think this was harder than a lot of tests I've taken in the past, but probably because when you look at like shooting related tests, especially, that sort of stuff I was like really into. And the what am I thinking? The the computer related, right? MSC, MCSE certifications, Microsoft certifications and shit. That stuff at the time I was really into, right?
Yeah, we were
So
like elbow deep in it. Of course, you're
yeah.
gonna know it. Like you had
So
to
I
maybe
think
study one or
yeah,
two things, but you
yeah,
live it. And the
yeah,
gun stuff, we've literally lived it.
yeah.
So it's just like,
So
and it's at the basic level.
so a good comparison would be the ham radio, right? Because that was another one that was like I'm still not really big into the radio thing, right? Um, but it's like, yeah, I really want to get this, and I want to play around with it and whatever, and have it. I've got it if I need it, type thing. Um, and if you've got it, then you can play around with it whenever you want. You don't have to worry about that. That's out of the way, right? And so I would say this is a very similar to that, with the exception to me that was far more complicated than this. It was super easy to me. It was super easy compared to the ham radio,
Okay.
because ham radio deals with a lot. While there's a lot of stuff, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff on. I don't want to say on the test because the test can vary. Um, but there's a lot of stuff that you should learn. Let's just say with the drone thing, that is a regular part of life, right? The weather, for example, right? Like how planes fly, and things like that's not as tedious as microwaves and wavelengths and
Blocks, radio
frequencies,
spectrum.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Antennas, and you get really nerdy, and ham is really nerdy and technical, I guess is what I'm saying. Where this is more of a practical thing, um, I believe. And
Yeah.
so
For
in
me, I
that
would say
sense,
if
it
there's
was
a
easier.
scale of 1 to 10, these are both at like this, I call them both at the 7 to 8, but maybe like you say, leaning more technical, practical, but still, depending on how much you might have come into it, as a 50-year-old, there's a 15-year-old, right? You're going to come in with different life experience to some
True.
extent.
Yeah. Yep. And just things you've picked up over the years or whatever, like your experience with Civil Air Patrol or whatever, that type of thing. Um, I don't remember where I was at. I don't remember where we were at.
Well, I kind of interrupted you there to find out where you're at with test taking, because you were just about to talk about like getting into I think you were about to start to talk about like the different resources that you used.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I started out with the really complicated. It was a 60 question, but it randomized, which was great. So you got different questions. Not every question was different every time.
Oh, since
But
we both recently took it, let me interrupt you again. Was it on a computer and the maps
yes,
and everything showed up on the screen like we were
yes,
talking? And then you also had this booklet.
yes. Yeah. And I want to get to that. So make sure that once we get to that part, and people out there in the chat hold me to it too, make sure that
I'll put a star on it.
when we get to the test part, and my experience with that, make sure I mention the booklet. So there was a couple of cool things about that, and then one interesting thing. Anyway, so free was always better first out, and I found what I think really helped me, quite honestly, because
You're talking
G
study.
come in with this practice test, and not only was it 60 questions, which was great because that's what's on the actual test, but they rotated questions, and not just the question itself, but how it's worded, how the answers are worded, and how the answers are ordered. So you can't necessarily remember it, right? You can't like memorize, for example. You can make correlations and figure it out, but you can't necessarily just memorize the answers, which was great. And like again, it was free. Um, but when G come in, when I was taking that the other night live over on my channel, he was like, "Fuck me, this is difficult. Like this is crazy. You're like, I didn't see anything like this." And I think that helped me, because what I
Sounds like
did
it. Yeah.
is I used that test, and then it would show you what you got wrong, and then I would go research, watch videos, read whatever on the questions I got wrong. And because they were so advanced and nerdy, I think that helped me in the end. And the other thing about that test is it did not give you, which is good and bad, and I'll get to that. But that particular practice test, I should say, you had to answer all 60 before it would give you
Right.
what you missed, your score, right?
As
So
opposed to some of them that, like, as soon as you
yeah,
answer it, it tells you right or wrong, and it's really difficult to learn that way.
right. And
It's
so
fast, but it's difficult to learn, I think.
and so um that was nice. Um and there was something else I was going to say about that test too. That
That
had
it
to
random
do
them and then it changed the
also see
wording.
it random, change the wording. Yeah, there was something else that had to do maybe with the yeah, I don't remember
Well, let
now
me interrupt
exactly
you
what
then
it was.
for something
Go
else.
ahead.
One of the
Yeah.
things I mentioned the last time we talked before you took the test, and I don't know if you had a chance, because I'm going to ask if you had a chance to do it, but I wanted to also say it publicly because I've forgotten to do this in the past, is
Yeah.
whenever I did that thing, like I figured out on a Tuesday or whatever, I'm going to go ahead and schedule it for this Saturday. For me, it was Saturday. So I knew I had whatever amount of days there, just a few days to study.
Right.
One of the first things I did is just go to the FAA website, read that page that kind of gives you the
Never
like
did.
bullet points, and then
Never did.
it sends you to like 3 PDFs, and I read they're like 60-page PDFs, and they're boring because they're just like the manuals. But I read them to have like an outline of everything I was going to need to learn. Um, and then so I was just going to throw that out there.
Yep.
That's one of the things I did to kind of prepare to
Mhm.
kind of, for me at least, to kind of know where the boundaries are. Like, what am I going to have to learn here? It didn't answer all the questions. It just showed you all the width, or like,
Right.
breadth of how much you're going to have to need. And then I went out and started to figure out to fill in some gaps.
And
So I just want to put that out for
if
people. It's
you
like an hour to do that.
yeah, if you've got the time and you're able to, I did not do that at all. Like I couldn't tell you anything about the FFA documentation,
Mhm.
none of that. It was practice tests, articles and stuff that were linked in YouTube videos. Like, hey, we got this information from this article or blog post or whatever, and the YouTube videos themselves, completely 100%.
And this is like everybody's out there trying to help each other. Nobody's out there like, I mean, except for
Right.
everybody wants you to buy maybe their course or buy a drone through their link or something. Obviously,
Right.
nobody's out there trying to mess with you. Like, it's all, here's my way of studying, or here's
Hmm.
my
Yeah.
way of taking the practice test and putting them together so that it'll help you.
Hmm. Well, I'm just saying it might not be if you find that groove or that lane or something that you're able to absorb it. And I think that's what happened. I think it was just a combination of things, and that's one of the reasons I went ahead and just said, let's do it. Let's pull the band-aid off. Let's take this test on Friday, 4 days, whatever it was, less than 5 days, you know, and get it over with, get it out of the way. Because we need to
Someone
talk about it
recommended
too. We need to talk about it too. But now that the test is over, there's other things I've still got to do. And
there's other
we'll get to
things and there's
that.
more to learn. Like it's sort of like CCW in a way, or it's sort of
Yeah.
like a driver's license. You
Well, I
have to
meant,
learn a bunch of stuff to get the test, but then you got to go
well,
learn how to drive. So it's
well,
like, get that out of the way so that you can go
yes.
start learning how to drive.
I guess, but I mean, we'll get to that. But no, I mean, it's more regulatory. But anyway, um, so after I'd done that test for, like I said, 62% was the lowest practice test score I had, period. But after I did that, and you mentioned it too, because I think that night I went live with you for a little bit, really early in the morning or something. And you said, yeah, you should check out some other tests. And I started checking out some other tests, right? And I would take those. And those were easier than the than that one. Every other one was definitely leaps and bounds easier.
Most of them just use those same
But
like test
I
questions that the FAA provides. So they're
but
just
I
giving you like the same, different
yeah,
versions of those same questions. Yours,
but
that one you found was different.
I kept going back to that one though because it was so difficult that I just felt like I was learning more from doing that test, right? Now that said, after taking a few, I found, and I think it was Peltier, Peltier. The first one, the free one, was King's, or King School or something like that. This one was Peltier, and it was free. Um, and then you got a free test that was 20 questions or 40 or something. But then it had a 60 question version you could do that had like a 400 question pool that it pulled from of questions for like $12 for like 3 months of access. So I'm like, okay, I can spring $12 here. Now the difference between it, It was a lot less clunky website, a lot less clunky text. I will say that. A lot easier to read, see the graphics that you needed, and a lot easier to read. But it gave you the answer automatically once you clicked it. And then hit next. It would give you the answer, but then it would also, unlike the free one, it would tell you if you got it wrong, it would tell you the right one and why you got it wrong. Now, it wasn't in depth about why, but it did at least give you something, right? Um, and so I basically, my combination was really those two. I would kind of alternate back and forth. And I started making 100s really, really quick on the one I paid for. The more difficult one, the free one, not so much. It was more the 97% ones that I was doing. I got up to 97 at one time. I could consistently get in the 90s with it. But it threw me for a loop, and you'll hear this too. You hear this a lot where they say they try to trick you, right? Um, and I don't know so much a lot of times if they try to trick you as much as they just word the question in a way. And so my number one takeaway when you get to the test, something you need to be paying attention to while you're studying and especially taking practice tests, is really reading the question 3 or 4 times if you have to, really reading all of the answers 3 or 4 times if you have to, 10 times if you have to, and paying attention to the words that are used, words, acronyms, like pay close attention to all of those and how they're used and the context in which they're used. Because there's times where, and I've seen this in a few videos where like, oh, they try to trick you with this question. And I don't have the question off the top of my head, but they would read it and I'm like, they're not trying to trick you with that. Like, that's just the way that happens to be worded is all.
Well, I think the famous one is the 100 miles an hour, 87 kilometers, 87 miles an hour, 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
And they go,
Knots,
what's the
knots?
Sorry, not kilometers, knots, 100
Yeah.
miles, 87 knots, whatever. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean? They'll give you every iteration of that and
Yeah.
then ask you, I don't even remember what that is. What's the top speed or something?
Right. Yeah.
But then you have to remember the conversion and, you know what I mean? Well, they can't give you every iteration. They'll give you every iteration, but the right one is one of them. And, that, I don't know if they call that a trick question, as I guess what I'm saying.
For me, there's certain things, and I say while you're doing that, I would put emphasis on making sure you understand things like that, like understand the difference between AGL and MSL, right? Because they'll use those a lot. Understand the difference between your classes. Understand the difference between magnetic and true. Understand, like, there's little things like that if you focus on understanding the vernacular differences in things and those acronyms, you're not going to get tripped up, especially if you read the questions carefully and take your time. And you got plenty of time to jump ahead to the test real quick. You got 2 hours, and I went through the exam, 60 questions. I went back through the complete exam again, every single question. And it didn't take as long because obviously I didn't have to answer it. I just had to kind of double check my work. But then the setup, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I want to explain this in the context of being able to take your time. The setup that I was using, the testing center, they had a thing where you could bookmark questions. And so once I went through the second time, I went through a third time with all the questions that I bookmarked. And I'd bookmarked things that I wasn't completely sure, like I wasn't confident about, right? And there was 8 of those. I'll go ahead and tell you, there was 8 of those, and I only missed 5 questions. Now you don't know what questions you missed, but and then that third time I went back through those 8 really slowly, and I did change a couple answers on those 8, by the way, that third time. I'm like, the words they're using, like the answer I got, like I just don't think that answer. I don't think that's what they're going for, right? Sadly, it was that
Was
way.
this like the bravado stuff, or was this
No,
like
that shit's easy.
military
That
access
shit's easy.
areas, or like where do you find the information for this? Those are the kind of ones that bug
This
me.
was more on procedural, right? And so, where are
How
we
many
at in
days
the?
before this, or when should
Let's
you approach this?
Yeah, where are we at? Yeah, yeah. Well, no, not really. Where are we at with the? Let's see. So I explained the test and the test I took. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, we can kind of. I guess we can talk about the test a little bit now since we've kind of started. Um,
I see what you mean. Yeah, I don't know if we missed anything. If anybody's listening
so
to this live and we missed something,
so
feel free to.
my test, which again they can all be different. So I'll go ahead and hit on the book. So first of all, it was really neat because they had a transparency sheet that they gave me. They gave me my scratch paper, 2 pencils, a dry erase marker, a transparency sheet, the book, and a calculator. And I took a magnifying glass, which I
So
did
that way
use.
you
I
can
highly recommend.
write on the map with that
Yeah, you can actually write on the map. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool. Now, did I use that? No. I cracked the book twice, and neither time was it cracked to try to answer a question. Neither time.
Same,
I
same.
used the
I was
book.
like,
I
oh, I
used
better
the
look at
book
this book since I'm here.
0.
I didn't look at it.
That was something that multiple, like everybody fucking said, even you said it really, was, oh,
Uh-huh.
you can use the book and you can cheat. A lot of answers are in the book. I didn't have to. I didn't have to
Well,
crack the
it's not
book.
like to cheat, but if you have like a question,
Well,
you can
yeah.
double
It's
check
they
or
give
whatever.
it to you. It's not cheating. Yeah.
It would be dumb to say, don't study, you got a book and you'll figure it out. Because if you don't
Yeah.
know it backwards
Right.
and forwards, you won't even know where to look in the book.
Right.
But like
Right.
for me, it was like military zone or MOA. Where do you look? In this chart, in this
Right.
guide, or in this fucking
Right.
thing? And I'm like, I don't know.
Now,
So, that's the kind of thing where the book isn't going to help me anyway. Like
yeah.
I either remember that or I didn't remember that. And I
Now
think it's
yeah, exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to make is the book wouldn't have helped me. The 8 questions to answer your questions, because I don't honestly remember them. I have to sit and think. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this debrief. That way maybe that shit popped back in my head.
like
But
for me,
I made
bravado, it's like, what are you doing that on a drone test? Like
yeah,
bravado or machismo or something? Like,
she's
come
yeah,
on. Like I understand this, but I don't need to know the
yeah.
FAA's definition in a word question.
So
Like that's
yeah,
just too much for a
yeah.
drone question or a
So
drone.
one of the reasons I didn't crack the book, or really the only reason, is those 8 questions that I wasn't confident about. None of that would have been answered in the book anyway. So that if
Right.
that gives you an idea of what type of questions they
The
were,
book
right?
is good for the maps. Like
Yeah,
anything you forget on the maps is in the book.
data, right? Data based stuff.
Yeah.
The book is good for. Um, so to give a breakdown, my test, because again they can all be different. So sectional charts. There was a lot of hoopla when I was studying about the sectional charts. And I will tell you this: the questions for the damn sectional charts could not be any easier. Like the only one, there was no math. I had no questions about math at all. I had add or multiply, nothing. And once you get into this and you start
Some of the
studying,
some
you've
of the
got to
tests.
deduct. You got to deduct the altitude of the airport from the altitude of the ceiling floor, or you got to multiply the force that is applied because of the attack angle, and you've got all this math, right? And I don't want to scare anybody. It's not difficult math, but you've got math, right? There was none on my test. There was no math, and there was no longitude latitude questions, because that's supposedly a lot of it too. It's what longitude and latitude is so and so place on the map, right? I had none of that. So I had sectional chart things that asked about uh, the MOAs, which is the flight pass for military aircraft or whatever. I remember that. I remember the balloon question, which is a popular one. And if you study, you'll know what I'm talking about. I had one that was asked what extracurricular activities or some shit, some airport did. And I'm like, holy crap, I may have to go in the book, right, and get the supplemental to figure this out. And as soon as I looked at the map, there was a little parachute there. And I'm like, well, fuck, they offer parachuting. That's easy. Like, it's right there. Like, that's not even difficult. It asked how high one tower was. And that was the only tower to the south of the airport on the map. Like, there was literally nothing at all south, southwest, or southeast of that particular airport, but that one tower. So like, there was no way you were going to miss that even if you measured wrong, like, because there wasn't a tower down there. That was the only one. So like, the sectional chart could not have been easier. It was easy.
There's a couple of test questions where it's like, there's an airport with like towers in every direction, basically. And then a question will be the tower that is 4 nautical miles southeast that's under construction. How high can you fly above ground level? And then you have to then, like you're saying, do math, because first off, you have to take your 400 plus the tower. Then you have to figure out, which one it is at 4 miles. So you got to figure out how big 4 miles is compared to the 5 mile ring and all that. And then you got to know which direction, and then you got to be able to pick out which tower, because maybe in the test question there'll be like 4 identical. If you miss any of those elements, there's a tower there to accept it. And and then you get to the real test, and like you're saying, it's a empty map with one tower. And it's like, can you measure the tower? Like, thank you. Like, yes.
Yeah, not a problem. So, again, and I would say my test was pretty well broken up between 4 categories. And I was thinking about this earlier. Pretty well broken up between sectional charts, weather, including how to read weather on the forecast readout with the abbreviations and all. You do need to work on that, your METARs and your TAFs. And it's really easy once you understand what the abbreviations mean. It's like,
I call it the ticker tape weather.
Yeah, it's easy. None of those fucking, you remember those weather charts that were in the free test I took? The crazy ass.
That's what I'm saying. That's
what
crazy.
Do they call them?
I'm not doing anything.
Prognostic chart, weather prognostic charts. There was none of that. It was nothing.
I'm pretty sure they accidentally left regular pilot stuff in.
Yeah, there was not a single prognostic chart and no questions about prognostic. Not even what they're used for. Nothing. So
or maybe the old pilot's test had, or maybe the old test had that, and they figured out nobody ever needs it out or something.
But here's the thing, right? And I know we're jumping around a little bit for anybody out there, but here's the thing about that test and learning prognostic charts. It gave me a better grasp of weather in general, and that helped, right? So weather, including, like I said, including the forecast with the abbreviations, and then general weather phenomenon, and like how the wind blows and why the wind blows this way and why there's a breeze and what creates fog.
Why they included it then, so that you'd have that like bigger perspective, that, let's say, 30,000 foot view, to make all the little stuff more understandable.
Maybe I don't know, but I need to
connect the dots.
I need to send those people a thank you. I really do. I've thought about.
I'm going to take that test just to figure it out now, because I'm curious, because I'm wondering if that's what it is, to connect some of the dots. Because like when you're talking like weather, like some of it is like when the wind goes up a hill, where do you have to worry about the wind coming down the hill? And you're like, it should be easy, but it's not necessarily. And then like trees and stuff. So maybe, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway. So again, sectional charts, pretty evenly distributed. Sectional charts, weather. The next one I would say, which is really easy to learn, is times and numbers. So there was a lot on the regulation of things in there. I say a lot. It was like 25%. But that has to do with numbers, right? How many days do you have to report an accident, right? How long is your registration good for? How long is your certification good for? And this goes back again to what we said a while ago, just in case anybody came in later or whatever, is pay attention to the question and know what it's asking, because there's a difference between registration and certification. And so and they will put if they're asking the registration, they'll put the time limit for certification in there. They'll put the opposite in there with the answers. So if you're not paying attention, you will screw up. Sorry. So there was a lot on the regulatory side, the paper pushing red tape side of it. There was a lot of that for sure. And then the fourth category, I would say, was operation, meaning um, how to fly the drone, what you should do when you're flying the drone, your attitude in flying a drone, that sort of thing, right? When should you get out of the way of an airplane? Should you get out? You're flying here. Should you get out of the way if the airplane's approaching here? Um, you know, uh, if what was another one? Like if you're um, what am I thinking? Hyperventilating. What do you do? If you're planning your flight, the what is it? The aeronautical, is it ADM or ADW or something? Aeronautical. Um, and there's that, and then there's what is it? CARE, and then trying to even think of the acronyms now. I'd know them if I seen them. And then I'm safe and those type of things.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Right? Yeah. There was a
The
lot about that,
checklist is
and
supposed to go down and like make sure you're in the right mindset and you've
yeah,
done all your procedure checks or something.
yeah. There's a lot about procedure checks and like when you're flying, like the battery's low and you're having to come back against the wind, and you know, shit like that, right? That is where I think I missed the majority, and I don't know for sure, but out of those 8, I think that's the area that I
Are
missed.
you talking stuff like 2 hours, or like if you've had 4 ounces of alcohol, how long before
That's
you can
easy because
fly?
that's a numbers thing. No, so
Okay,
no, that's
okay.
not. But they will screw you up because you can't fly if you've had a drink in the last 8 hours. But a mixed drink, which is one of the questions, stays in your system for 3 hours. So if they say, how long does a mixed drink stay in your system, or
And they give you
whatever,
the answer of 8
it's
hours, and you're used to saying 8 hours with
mhm,
alcohol, right?
yeah, yeah, it's not 8 hours, right? So, um, but what tripped me up was I'm trying to think of like an example because like obviously you can't take screenshots, you can't write this shit down or take it with you. But
Well, there's stuff like if it causes $500 in damage, how fast or how when do you
yeah, but that's in
contact?
numbers. That's more of a regulatory, right? Is where I
Okay.
put that, right? It's more of the regulatory side. So what I'm talking about is things like
Well, there's a lot
so
like
I
if
can't
you're
even, that's
gonna
the
talk
bad
to
thing
your
is
visual
without looking at it.
observer and your crew chief and that's an
Yes.
example of,
Yeah,
and then
but
it
that's
gives you like
easy.
4 different.
Yeah,
Okay.
crew management, right? But crew management's easy. What I'm talking about is the mental fucking shit they do, right? Like, um, what is it? It's like, what is the acronym? Pilot, whatever, pilot aircraft communication equipment, maybe. Pace.
Ace is probably one.
Is that what it is? Like shit like that, right? And they'd go, what's the purpose of the or they'd say something about according to like Pace, the pilot's mentality if their wife cheated on them last night, could be like whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you
That
have
kind of
anxiety, you shouldn't fly. Like fucked up questions like that. Like, what's this got to do with anything?
right.
Like, what are you talking about? And it was they were bullshit questions in my opinion. I should have been prepared for them. Probably should have studied some more
Well,
on
like
that type
that's what
of
I was
stuff.
trying to say with like the
I
ones where like,
focused more. I focused more. That's where I fucked up, right? And I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to admit to, okay, taking this, doing all this so quick, that's probably where I fucked up, is because I was more into the hard data stuff, right? Airports, classification of airports, all the hard numbers on regulation and blah, blah, blah. And flights and how to fly and the procedure of actual flying and that sort of stuff, that the mentality, attitude portion of it, like, yeah, that failed me big time, big time. Well, not big time. I'm at 92%, so it's not like it hurt me that bad.
well,
But
there's these what do they call them, like areas, or like I call them sectors or something of the
mhm,
test, and that's one of them. And yeah, if you miss studying, I guess some of
right,
these, especially ones that are going to want a specific answer.
Yeah.
And I don't like them because they're the same for me. These are like, I'm going to call them arbitrary-ish or something, because basically you have to read their dumb stuff and memorize it, because it'll, like I say, like machismo and bravado. Those are just dumb words that shouldn't even be in a drone test. But they're like, if your friends are taunting you into flying, that's an example of, and then it's like all these dumb words that are like, and then like machismo is the answer. And like you
Right.
even if you memorize their little section there that you got to read, their word questions are trying to make it like we have to have a degree in psychoanalyzing people's something,
Right.
and
Yeah.
be comfortable with all that. And it's like,
Like yeah.
for what really? Just so you're in a good mental state? Like they could just as easily say like be in a clear mental state or something, and then like,
Yeah.
you know what I
Don't
mean?
do stupid shit, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like seriously. Like you don't have to get all
But at the same
psycho
time, this
analyzing
is like,
shit. Yeah.
you're taking a freaking test that costs you money, and you're doing all this effort, and you're going to have a license which can be taken away. So they don't really need to put all this stuff that's like, remember, what if you screw up this way? We're going to take your license away. What if you screw up this way? We're going to take your license away. So it is, I think it's redundant, or just, I don't know what the word is, but unnecessary for sure, to
Right.
make
Yeah.
us know that part of the yeah, I don't know what that is. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is if you don't read that stuff, then yeah, it's going to be tough. You're going to end up getting a black eye, because it's basically almost the same as what we were saying. Like it's going to give you 3 answers, or it's going to give you 4 answers. 3 of them are probably pretty close.
I
One
only
of
had
them is an
3.
outlier, but you
Did you
got to
have
kind
4?
of guess some
I
of
only
them.
had 3.
Oh, I don't remember actually, but
Yeah.
whatever. Like I'm just saying, like typically on those kind of questions, they're going to give you a couple that are close and then an outlier. So you
Right.
don't always get like the obvious.
Some of them there, and I noticed that today. Some of them had the right answer, and it had 2 that was totally wonky, like that had nothing to do with it. And you're like,
Okay,
okay,
so that you
that's
could,
weird.
I guess that's another question. Like as
Like,
a person who's
yeah,
taken enough tests, was there a way, could you have taken this test just by
no,
process of
no,
elimination, taking the
nope,
test, being a good test taker?
nope. Now that being said, I mean the book would come into play, right? Um, but without doing anything, you would not know how to look in the book.
Yeah,
I don't
how to,
think
and I was going to
looking
say
per
sometimes
you.
questions can answer
Yeah.
themselves, but unless you knew back and forward, you're not going to know that the questions are
Oh,
answering
I
themselves.
had that, by the way, just since you mentioned that. And this was great to understand how, when you're taking the test, how the facilitation works. I could go back and forth between questions. I could answer them or not answer them. I could bookmark them where I could easily pull them up and go back to all the ones I bookmarked. I had a lot of movement, right, in the testing software to be able to do things. And to their credit, the testing facility, when you sit down, you go through a tutorial and a practice test. Not that's got nothing to do that. Now again, this was a
Oh no,
testing
I
center
forgot
out
about
there,
that. I did the same. Yeah.
but it was about states, United States, and what's the capital of the United
But
States,
it
and
made you learn how to take the
when
test.
was
You
the
didn't screw
Declaration
up
of
the real test.
Independence, and it was like shit like that, right? But it kind of made you take a test to understand how it worked, and it walked you through that while you did it.
Right.
So before the time ever started, and I started taking the actual test, which was cool. Um, it took extra time to do that, obviously, but it was still cool because then I knew how I could move around. So point is, I got to a certain part and I answered a question and I wasn't sure, and I marked it, marked it, and I bookmarked it and marked it on my paper and also bookmarked it. And um, I went to um, like 3 questions later, 3 or 4. It wasn't very many. The answer to that question was given in the question like 4 questions later. And I'm like, oh man, I think I fucked that one up. And so once I got done answering that question,
Good.
um, I went back and changed my answer. But I caught it, right? I was like, oh wait, I read that wrong, misunderstood, whatever. Went back and changed it. Um, Scratch paper. I used scratch paper to write down. And they always talked about using your scratch paper to measure, and I didn't have to do that. Like, and they talked about using your scratch paper to do the math, and I didn't have to do that. They talked about using and talking about when I was prepping for all this, right? Studying. Everybody talked about using a scratch paper to draw out your diagrams for different things. I used it for once for a diagram. I'll get to that in a second because I'll have to remember what I did it on. And then I did to keep track of the questions that I skipped. So the one time that I used it, and to their credit, whoever explained this, multiple people may have whenever I was studying, it was you're in this area of the airport or around the airport, and a flight is on approach to runway X, or they're on takeoff from runway X. What do you do? Right? And I actually, to their credit, drew that out. And the reason I did that, in all the practice tests, it got to where I memorized the fucking answer, right? Like, because it was all like the same, all the variations. It was like 4 or 5 variations, and depending on the airport and the runway, like I'd done them so many times, I automatically knew what the answer was. And this was different. This was a completely different airport, a completely different runway, a completely different position. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do what they said, and I'm going to draw this out. So I drew my runway out, and I'm like, okay, it was takeoff, left base, takeoff left base is what it was. Or was it right base? It was left base. Takeoff left base. And I was like, oh, and I'm on the west, or whatever, or I was on the south, maybe. I don't remember, but I wasn't close. Like, it was on the opposite side of the airport than what I was. So it's like, okay, I'm fine. Like, not a problem. I'm not in the flight path and that was one of the answers is, hey, you're good. You're not in the flight path. Don't worry about it. And that may have been one of the hardest questions for people if they don't understand that sort of thing, But there wasn't. Oh, that gets me into airports. That was, I think, the only air traffic question there was, too. When I was talking about all the questions that they didn't ask, I think that was the only one dealing with air traffic. The only other one potentially was, it said you check a NOTAM, or you realize there's a balloon in the area, and it's like, what do you do? And it didn't say, it just said a balloon, I think. It didn't say a hot air balloon, which is a lot of the test questions that I've seen. It just said a balloon. And I'm like, a balloon in the area? Maybe it did say a weather balloon. I can't remember now. But either way, I looked at the answers, and 2 of the answers was fuck the weather balloon. Basically, it's like, you have right of way. Don't worry about the weather balloon. And the other one was like, fly below the weather balloon. Just go below it. And then the other one was, hey, that balloon may be attached to a cable somewhere, so you might want to be mindful of of that, and stay clear of the area. And I'm like, yeah, that's got to be the answer, right? Like, because obviously we know from the weather balloon question, if you remember the weather balloon question, that's tethered, right? Remember that question on the practice tests? It's a very popular question about an obstruction, and it's a weather balloon tethered at 3,008 feet or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's tethered in that question, then the answer's got to be. And like, I don't know for sure if I got that one right or missed it. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like I got that one right.
No, it's pretty much the way I remember it too. And can't, unless you glitch on reading it or something, like the answers are
it was
pretty obvious. Yeah.
But that's really the only flight obstacle, type question.
I didn't see any. I don't remember any questions. I remember a lot of test questions, but I don't remember any questions about like what paint on the airport runway. blah,
The
blah,
taxiways and shit was a huge thing in the practice test. Like, I can tell you all that. I could answer them.
I never bothered to know all that because I'm like, I just can't imagine why they would care. Why would we ever need to, like, when are we going to be at an airport worrying, like, on the taxiway, like standing there? Come on, you're not even allowed to go out there when you're on an airplane. So I just couldn't imagine. I saw like a couple of infographics where somebody had like a little, everything possibly you could have at an airport in this little infographic, and that's where I was like, nope. I appreciate seeing it now, but this is way too much for me to remember, and there's no way I gambled, I guess. I'm like, there's no way they're asking us to remember all this for a drone pilot's license. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but if you're saying you didn't see any of that airport,
I didn't see any of the airport signage and stuff. I didn't see any of that.
Yeah, because there's also signs,
like
right?
The windsock.
See a sign. Come on.
So there was 2 airport things in studying, and I didn't have a huge problem with them. Did really well on the practice test, obviously, with it. But there was 2 things that I didn't see at all on my test, and that was this having to do with the signage at the airport. And then the second thing with the airports was in the practice test, it would show you the runways and it would give you a windsock, and it would tell you, hey, which runway does this plane need to land on or whatever. And there was none of that. I had none of it.
I mean, I like knowing that stuff, but I also like knowing that I can forget that stuff and be comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, I did fine. It was a concept that I absorbed pretty easily on that. It's because it's kind of common sense, right? And once you understand it, the hardest thing to get with runways and approaches and takeoffs and runways and shit, the hardest thing to grasp for anybody out there is orientation. Would you agree? Like, once you get your orientation down and you understand how the runways are laid out and why the numbers are the way they are, like, it's pretty easy from that point, in my opinion.
I mean, it's like a
because you can draw it out if nothing else, really easy.
Well, it's like an escalation, and like, it's neat to know about airports, like the runways and why they're like they are, and then that the what do you call them, like the patterns and the approaches and the terms, and then understanding where you might want to stand if you were gonna stand with a big pole or something next to an airport, knowing where to stand. But then in reality, we can't fly anywhere near them, and we're never going to fly. I mean, even if we can fly with authorization, they're never going to give us authorization to fly anywhere near a pattern.
Right.
And why would we ever need to? And if we did, we would be in contact with a tower or something.
Well, but correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the unmanned aircraft. Whatever.
Yeah, no, it's that airport in the middle of nowhere.
So if you had a big ass remote control jet or airplane, right? You would probably use an airport to play with that or to do things with that and take it off and fly.
That's a good point.
Right?
It's not just drones.
And in that case, if it wasn't a drone, quadcopter, right? It was an actual fucking airplane.
You're right.
That you were flying around taking pictures with. Like, you would have to follow all the rules of an airplane, I would think.
And if we are standing in an airport in the dumbass spot, that would be on us. Like, if we, it's just some airport in the middle of nowhere that because there's like 8 of them around Tucson. I can go to an airport that I can go fly at, because there's like one of them's for ultra lights, what do they call them? Like, the fabric and pipe type airplanes. There's no tower or nothing there.
It's a G airspace.
No, it's nothing. Yeah, it's just whatever the airport is when they're flying. It's like you got to be aware of them or whatever.
Or even E airspace if there's a ceiling, right?
Well,
like, as long as it's not E to the ground.
I'm sure they have to say whatever just like a real airplane. I'm sure they say whatever they're going to say and take off like a real airplane would.
Yeah.
But then there's regular, just little airplanes. There's those like communities that people live in. So yeah, if it's your responsibility to know, shit, I'm launching my plane right in the way of somebody. If they were taken off, where they'd be. But you know what I mean? But dumbass idiot to do that.
Good question for G23. The hardest part to study for. I think the mental, I think we covered that for me. I think it was all the psychoanalysis bullshit, mental like
yeah, and not that it's difficult to
attitudes
understand the
and
conceptual part. It's just that what the technical jargon they want us to remember based on their little cues. Like
right.
that's just a whole extra part
Right.
to memorize for no
That's
reason.
why, yeah, that's why I say that's hard to study for, right? Like the hard data, like numbers and regulate dates, dates and times, and things like that, and expiration periods, and anything dealing with a number and stuff like that hard data, right? That stuff is easy to study for because there's an certain amount of memorization or core. I don't know what the
Well, it
like
matters.
once you understand the 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 different airspaces, right? Like not a problem. You can handle pretty much any question. It's fine. Like but no matter how it's written, you can pretty much handle it if you read it carefully. And same way with the regulatory stuff, right? Because that's a hard and fast. Those are hard and fast things, right? But then when you get into shit like, oh, this pilot feels like he's got a headache, and his wife cheated on him a week ago, and his visual observer has got another pilot in command that wants, like, what the fuck, quit. Like, it's so like convoluted or
Well,
something.
and then the answers will be like, he's guilty of, and then it's like
Yeah,
four similar words, and it's
yeah.
like, hey, man, I don't know, like four similar words and then a wrong
He's
word. So
guilty
it's
of
like,
machismo, impulsivity, and inclusivity. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
what the
And it's
hell?
like, okay, it's not this one because
Yeah,
that's a weird word, but I don't know which one you're expecting me to say. And both of these are words that you want me to know the definition of, but you're giving me a
right,
word problem with it. Yeah, those
right.
part
Yeah,
were definitely tough. I would say weather because
think
it's just
so.
such a big chunk. Yeah, it's just such a big chunk. Once after the fact, 2020 hindsight, oh no, it's no big deal because you
But
can
there,
forget it all. But it's just such a big chunk and you don't know where it's coming because there's thunderstorms and clouds and stuff. That's kind of the easy weather, like you're saying. Like that's just, what there's like three
if
parts
you,
of a thunderstorm and like where these clouds live and why they exist. But then you
yeah.
get into like what kind of
So
weather turns into this kind of flight
right,
situation.
but here's
Then this kind of weather is brought on by moist air coming in over the things. Like you say,
mhm.
you did that one thing where it made you do way more weather than me, and I'm wondering if that's on a 30,000 point. Because for me, it was like I have
I
to
think
learn this,
so.
and I have to
I
learn
think
this, and I have
so.
to learn this, and I have
Yeah.
to learn this, and it's like, what part are they going to
Well,
quiz me on? It's just so much to
so
remember that was so different. That's
so let me say this. Let me say this too, since you're saying that weather was tough for you. I can understand that. But let me say this for you, or in response to that. I have forever been a weather nerd. Anytime the slightest little bit of rain or bad weather, I'm on my weather fucking apps, and I'm nerding out on pressures and like trying to predict, and like I know the news station is saying XYZ, but it's like fuck them. They're not right all the time. In fact, they're wrong more than they're right. And so I'm gonna look at all these numbers and kind of determine for myself, like, should I hide in a bunker because tornadoes coming? Like, so I've been a weather nerd for a while.
well, it's a
So
lot different
weather,
when you live in a
so
city where
weather,
you're living it
I've
next to
sort
the
of
oh no.
understood because you create a vacuum. So the breeze, right, the sea breeze thing, right. So when heat on the land, shit rises, right. The heat rises. So when the heat on the land rises, it sort of creates a vacuum in a way that pulls air in, and pulling air in is the fucking wind. It's the air moving. And so, like, all of that in my brain, because I've got a grasp on all that, makes sense. So I would say this about weather: understand understand temperature and humidity, which leads you to understand dew point, right? Temperature, humidity. Um, then understand what got me, and I had to pay attention to more than anything, and you know this because I got the question wrong on a practice test when you were there, was like how the phases of a thunderstorm worked. Like I've got wonky on that. So understand the phases of for this particular test, and all is what I'm saying. Understand temperature and humidity and how that relates to dew point. Understand wind in general and how wind works, and then understand um, the phases, or the uh, is that it? The phases of a thunderstorm, the whatever it is, the Is that what I'm
cycle,
talking
I
about?
think.
Life cycle of a thunderstorm. There you go. There you go.
But
And
again,
if you do that, I think you'll be fine.
What do we need to know about that as a drone pilot in reality?
Right.
Like, they
Right,
just
because
said,
it's storming.
don't fly
Because
in bad weather, right? And then
yeah,
they've been done.
right.
Like, okay, that's pretty much all bad weather. Do we have to know what bad weather is?
Yeah, right. It's
But
too
I think
bad, right?
maybe it's because I figure it's maybe because if we know that, like, we're not supposed to fly within this 500 feet this way and 2,000 feet this way of a cloud,
Of clouds.
and but the thing is, if they were, I'm assuming that they want us to know that an airplane is also not going to fly through a cloud. So that means we got to be aware of where the airplane might be when there's clouds there. So in other words, the clouds are taking up a bunch of air, and then the planes have to move around it, and we should move our shit. But they don't tell us. They just tell us like all this shit that's complicated, and expect us to know it, but then kind of assume that we're going to understand that it's because we want to get out of the way of the airplanes. They could just say airplanes can't fly in clouds. Get the hell out of the way of the airplanes when there's clouds out. And then we could have just been like, okay, because we're all fine on the ground anyway. Like they act like we're going to be up 1,000 feet or something. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we are like flying around a tower or something and we are at 1,000 feet and there's clouds and an airplane hits us, like at that point, like the cloud, it's a whole mess of shit. And we were technically allowed to be there, and there's nothing we could have done. But the airplane would have hit the tower anyway. You know what I mean? Like whether or not our drone was there. So really, I mean, I can't even imagine where this needs to be on a test, I guess. I really do think they took the pilot's test and started erasing stuff and just couldn't erase some blocks. They, probably had a debate like, we can't erase all of weather. And they're like, well, if we erase this much of it, and they're like, all right, so they have to learn a bunch of dumb stuff. Mm-hmm. Same with that airport stuff. Like we wanted to make sure they don't like fly in the way of an airplane.
Well, the hardest concepts for me to grasp when I was studying or in relation to weather, which overall weather is not a problem for me. But I will say this, since we're on weather and G23 is asking about hardest to study. And this may not be the case for G23, where he lives. But for me, I don't live around mountains. And so with studying, I had the hardest part, and on the practice test too, I had the hardest part with like mountainous weather related to mountains. And I've said this. I said this the other night, I think when we were live. So if you live in a place and you're going to take this drone test and study for all this, and you live in a place that doesn't have mountains, that's a whole different type and the way the weather works and the clouds and the wind and the other things. Mm-hmm. Make sure you study that and you understand how the weather works around clouds, because it's not, weather is weather, right? But there are the nuances, and that's what will get you in the wording of the questions is the nuances. So make sure you understand it. It's not difficult once you get into it. Scott said, did they go over no-fly areas? I had absolutely nothing about no-fly areas in my test at all. No restricted airspaces, nothing to deal with that at all. Nothing. Now, I had questions about airspace, like,
I think people,
you're in a, and it was on the sectional chart, and it was like you're in a class E here, and that class E is the shaded magenta, and you're in that class E airspace flying at 200 feet. Are you, what's the deal? And you're like, yeah, it's class, or what's the airspace is what it would say. And it's like, okay, well, that airport is class E, but it starts at 700 feet. So if I'm at 200 feet, I'm in class G. I'm not in class E, so I'm good to go. So there was one question, I want to say one, that had to do with that. But as far as actual restricted no fly, there wasn't anything. There was one question on, was it one or two? There was one. There was one question on NOTAMs, and NOTAMs has to do with temporary flight restrictions. And so, like, the president comes to town, big concert, outdoors, blah 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 blah, right? So that's like temporary no-fly areas, right? And there was one question on NOTAMs that was a very simple question that I think was literally just like, what are they use? What is it? The NOTAM D, maybe? I can't even remember now. So, understand the difference. But um, it was like, what are these used for? And it's like, it was like, it was like three answers, and it was, I want to say it was outdoor concert. I think was the correct answer. And the other two were stupid. Like they had nothing to do with the NOTAM at all. Period. One was like, this is how pilots communicate. I don't even remember. I don't remember, but it was stupid. There might be one had to do with the military zone or something. I don't remember. But
so when you start doing the test and start learning this stuff, you figure out that you're a pilot, and one of the first things that they'll or I guess if you start to watch videos or if you take a course, I'm sure when you start to approach this, like, from the beginning, they'll explain it that the airspace is governed by the FAA, or I guess would you say governed? It's regulated by the FAA, governed by the country, I guess. So because we all have to share it, huh?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that when they kind of explain that, you kind of learn right away that, like, as a pilot, you're learning that, how am I say it? It's like getting a driver's license. As soon as you start getting your driver's license, you don't start thinking about no parking areas because you're learning about where to drive. So they don't go over where not to fly because it's kind of obvious. Like you're not going to fly at an airport, but like Clover's saying, to us, it's just what airspace. We know where we can fly. We know, like, of the airspace, it's like this big jigsaw puzzle in the air. Most of it is open and not governed or not regulated really, except for by the like rules of, like, if you're a plane and you're another plane, you say hello to each other and not hit each other. Right. Yeah. Like, and then they got some like paths up there and shit, which I guess would be technically a different kind of airspace. So anyway, we think of it as like, we start to see the air in the sky, like, as like either where the big planes are and where we can be. And then the no fly areas, we think of that as, like what Clover's saying, like a temporary thing. And that leads to G23's question here. What's the rule for flying a drone and when there's like law enforcement drones in the air? And that's, again, as a pilot, you have to be aware of the procedures, the rules, like how they govern or how they regulate. I shouldn't say govern. That sounds stupid. How they regulate it. And the way that they regulate it is they'll say, you have to know the rules, and the rules exist. And if there's something that comes up, something suddenly came up, then we alert you in this way. And the way that we do it is we have this bulletin. So in reality, for us, like, there's humans that do this stuff. We go to an app, a thing on our phone, and we say, I want to fly right here. And it goes, where are you on the planet Earth? And it uses GPS and goes, yes, you can, or no, you can't. And then it goes, yes, you can, but there's law enforcement drones in the air. So now guess what? No, you can't. So the rule is we're never going to be able to fly with law enforcement drones.
Or it could potentially do it even with law enforcement drones. And the NOTAM could say something. It could just be a notice, right? That there are laws. You'll be mindful. We're kind of like an MOA or a whatever. The military operations or whatever. It's like, hey, there's, just be aware. The NOTAM says, it doesn't say you can't fly. Now it can, but it could say there's a temporary restriction until whatever Zulu. But it also could say potentially something like, hey, just be aware that there are police drones in the area, and fly with caution or whatever the fuck, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I just can't imagine. It might say there's police helicopters in the area, but even then they would tell us to get lost.
That's probably
I just think too, that we'd get told to just scram.
Yeah.
Well, closest, I don't know if you played with the apps. Whenever, because I have too many of these zones that I can't fly in easily, so I just go to the outskirts. And whenever you fly near something, the app will tell you you're cool to fly here, but you're within a quarter mile, a mile, whatever, of a bad place, and that'll happen. Like you can probably fly like next to the area, and it'll say, be aware that there's police drones nearby. But if you ever try to launch when it's in a, whatever that's called, like a no-fly zone, essentially like a temporary no-fly zone, either for law enforcement or for like a concert or something, it's going to say you can't fly.
So I got, And I made a note here, so because I thought about it a while ago and I did not want to forget. So there was a question on there. Now that we're talking, but I had no fucking clue of the answer on this one.
Oh, okay.
Because none of the answers seemed right. And I'm trying to remember the exact answers, but the question went something like this: to whom are you required to show your basically your papers
Oh, yeah.
um, when it's requested? And
Like who has the authority, in other words?
one was a community organization. One of the options was uh, a person representing, or the person to whom the declaration of certification applies, or some kind of shit. And then the other one, I picked the other one, but I can't remember now exactly what the other one
Law
said.
enforcement officer.
It said, did not say law enforcement. It did not say FFA. That was my point. It didn't say law enforcement or FFA or FAA anywhere in there. None of it said that.
There's another one. I can't
And that's
remember.
that's what threw me. And I was like, well, it can't be like a community organization, because that's like the fucking Lions Club. Like, what the fuck? And then I was like, and it, like, what do you mean the person responsible for the certification? Like, that doesn't make, like, I show it to myself, like, that doesn't make any sense either. So like, it has to be, and again, we don't know if I've got it right or wrong, but I'm like, it has to be this other one. And I don't remember how the other one was worded,
like,
but it was
goofy. Have you seen the question? I only saw it as a test question, but it was like, who can hold a FAA test in their hands? And then it was like, the answer was like a certified FAA instructor or somebody, or no, the answer was an FAA pilot who is taking his drone test and acting as an instructor or something, like crazy thing. And I'm like, wow, that's a weird one, because like technically you're not supposed to talk or have, or and you can't possess a test of any FAA thing, probably, because probably some law. Because I think probably 9/11 or whatever, or maybe before that, I don't know.
To Scott's question there, I never ran into anything that even talked about that in any of my studying.
Are there any limits on how close you can fly by other drones?
Far enough away to not create an accident would be my answer.
I mean, that's pretty much probably right. It depends on if you're flying in coordination is the thing. So there's no laws. Now, there are.
True, you couldn't do a drone show if you didn't have, you know what I mean? If
no, you can't do a
proximity was a problem. Yeah.
You can't do a drone show, because a drone show is more than one drone being flown by one person or automated. And because, you know what I mean? Like, if there's 1,000 drones, there's not 1,000 drone pilots on the ground. So they're not doing that by their wiggling their fingers. That's all like that's a waiver, basically.
That's a waiver. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
so,
you can get waivers for all kinds of things, by the way.
I bought a course on how to get waivers because I didn't want to have to fart around. So yeah, I'll be doing waivers here pretty soon.
I figured you were going to offer a course on how to do waivers. That'd be
no. I'm going to work with Pilot Institute up in Prescott, because I'm really enjoying everything they've presented. I use their practice, like what I was telling Clover. What I ended up doing is I read all the actual stuff. I learned that a long time ago. Just read whatever the government tells you to do, because you have to. I mean, you have to do that shit in the Army and shit. You like. They tell you, here's the manual, you got to read the damn manual, even though it's like 6th grade level, because there's some dumbass stuff that's only going to be written in the manual, because everyone assumes you read the manual. They're never going to say it again. So there's some like basic shit in there. Plus, I just like to know what the rule, like where the boundaries are. Like, what am I going to be tested on? It's sort of like a table of contents of what you have to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did that. Then I took a bunch of practice tests, and I found an app. And then after a few days of just grinding those practice tests whenever I felt like it, many a day, multiple ones a day, I figured out after 2 days before my test where I was missing, what I was missing. Then I went online and started looking for videos of that Pilot Institute channel. Not like they had a video for everything, but pretty much for every hot point or like issue I was having, somebody had a video. And 8 times out of 10, it was Pilot Institute that had the one that made it concise for me. So anyway, so I was like, okay, I like their stuff, and I've been watching their stuff before anyway. They do a live chat every week, and then they do a follow-up. So like, they're putting time in to keep the community with the whole DJI thing and just in general. So I appreciate what they're doing. So anyway,
I've got to. I only had about an hour. I've got to jump.
okay.
So, thanks for doing this and kind of getting so I could get my thoughts out. For anybody listening, I will a lot of good information here, but I plan on probably filming and dropping a video tomorrow on this. So this is kind of getting ready to do that. Plus, I'm sure I knew that you probably wanted to know my insights anyway.
Sure.
So and quiz me on some of it. So or
well, I think it's
follow up would be a better way to put it. Follow up on some of it. So
I think it's like ham. It's one of those things that might sound intimidating, but it isn't. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Amount of resources out there. And that's what I was going to say with the waivers and stuff. I just figured taking a course would be faster. Paying basically $70 or something to figure out how to do it. But you can do everything online. That's the neat part. And that's what we basically were talking about, is that Clover did it by looking at stuff online. I kind of described how I did it by just using free resources and mostly online. But you can take test classes. Like you can take a course on how to take the class or how to take the test. And I would say look into that. There's quite a few of them out there. And often they'll have some kind of a guarantee, since it's $175 to take the test through to the FAA or whatever. When you're taking a course to help you pass the test, a lot of those will have a guarantee that says if you don't pass, we'll pay for your retest, which is comfortable because you're paying something for that course, and if it's not effective, you're out that money. So if they can make it a draw so that at least you're not out the $175 and you get the experience of taking the test and you kind of see where your weaknesses are or whatever, then I think that's a pretty good way to go. I don't know. Like I said, I like the Pilot Institute, of course. I'll put a link in there. I don't think I did already, but I'll put a link in there. But there's other places that have, there's so many options for courses to take the test. I don't want to discount them because although you can be done without it, Clover's an example of that. I did the same. I don't want to assume everyone, is comfortable with that or wants to gamble $175 and the time, because that's quite a bit of time you're taking to study and then go take the test. It takes like a half a day or a day, depending on how far you got to drive, and then to potentially have to do that again if you fail to be able to retest. So I think that there's some potential with a course that would show you the same way as when I mentioned I read the initial, whatever it's called, like it's a PDF essentially. It's like the manual of how to get your pilot's license from the FAA, and it's like a table of contents. It tells you just the steps that you're going to need to take and what's on the test, but it doesn't give you the answers. It's not like a comprehensive study guide or anything. It's just a list of all the requirements to become a drone pilot. And after reading that, I had an idea of what's involved. I think with some of these courses, they're going to be able to offer that perspective for someone who's, doesn't want to read the whole thing or wants something more useful than having to just read a PDF. And I think most of them are, they kind of vary, but they're anywhere from like $30 to $200. And, we're talking about something, like I say, that's going to take that much time and cost that much. I don't want to discount them, even though, like I say, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessarily necessary. Let's put it that way. So I don't know if we answered any other questions that you might have, but basically, yeah, Clover just wanted to do a little bit of a debrief, offered to do it live here. So I figured let's take them up on that. I was just telling them that I went out flying today with the Flip. I guess that one is not in this picture, but the Flip is a one of the new DJIs I just bought, and I bought some filters for it. I spent about an hour putting one filter on, flying it up, looking around, putting another filter on, flying it up, taking it down, putting the next filter on. For 6 filters, went up and spun it around, and then changed the filters, came home, put all that into the computer, put all that into the video editing, put all those next to each other, put it like a Brady Bunch screen so that you could see them all next to each other. who is a camera person out there? What did I miss? What did I forget? Well, I didn't watch any of the video courses that I have paid for. So I went out there like a dummy, and it was set to auto. So instead of being a fixed number, so essentially my little drone robot, had sunglasses on and went, oh, I got sunglasses on, let me adjust. Oh, I got different sunglasses on, let me adjust. Oh, I got different sunglasses on. So all the videos that I took almost look exactly the same. And it's because it's on auto focus or whatever, like auto adjust. So I learned a lesson and wasted, 2 hours? Anyway. So you can take your drone test, and that's going to get you, it's like I was saying with Clover earlier, that's like your driver's license. You know how to fly and how to fly around other people and what the rules of the road are. But now you got to learn how to drive. And it's going to be different if you're driving a motorcycle or if you're driving a semi-truck or if you're driving a four-wheel drive something. So, depending on what you buy as far as a drone and how you're going to drive it, you got to go get some experience. And then from there, you have to learn what time of day to fly it to get the best work, which of these filters, how to use the filters. So hopefully it's an interesting hobby / side job. I'm hoping to make it both a hobby since it's so fun to do, but also, as you get better at it, and hopefully it's a service that you can provide real estate people, contractors, just friends in general, if they want to go look at their roof or something. So the better you get at being able to move that little robot around, the more useful it can be for that. All right. Well, I wanted to leave some time here to get some questions at the end. Nobody's asking them, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We'll see you next time. I'll probably change this outro real quick. What did we have before? I think we'll just put that one back on. Take it easy.
Introducing Gear Websites, your all-in-one solution designed to make life easier. Whether you're a busy professional, a student juggling multiple tasks, or just someone seeking simplicity in daily life, Gear Websites has you covered. With its user-friendly interface, you can effortlessly create and manage your online presence without any technical expertise. Need to improve your gear, start a blog, or even learn a new skill? Gear Websites does it all. Enjoy seamless integration with various tools, ensuring that you can connect with your audience and manage your content efficiently. Plus, our responsive design means your website will look stunning on any device. Don't let complexity slow you down. Experience the ease of Gear Websites today. Visit us at gearwebsites.com and take the first step towards simplifying your online journey. Gear Websites, making life easier, one click at a time.